We are kicking off with Raw as the rivalry between Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley continued on tonight's show ahead of their Women's World title match at SummerSlam. The match was made official after Morgan accepted Ripley's challenge last week, and fans have been left wondering where Dominik Mysterio's loyalties have been as of late. On last night's show, Rhea dragged Dominik to the ring after learning of Dominik's backstage encounter with Morgan, and Ripley immediately called out Morgan. The champ appeared in the crowd but declined to come down to the ring, and Liv mentioned her affection for Daddy Dom while mocking Ripley's appearance. Morgan said that gorgeous men like Dominik go for girls who look like her, not Ripley, which led to the Eradicator charging towards Liv, only for Dominik to hold her back. In a fit of rage, Dominik revealed that he hated Morgan, and that she meant nothing to him, leaving the WWE Women's World Champion to walk away in tears. Meanwhile, Ripley showed affection for Dominik as they walked together hand in hand, seemingly putting to bed the questions around their relationship. The emotional stakes are higher than ever, setting the stage for an explosive showdown at SummerSlam, where Ripley seeks to regain the title she was never beaten for. It'll be interesting to see how this storyline unfolds and who will leave Cleveland on top, though it appears we know who Dirty Dom will be leaving with. The Liv Morgan-Dominik relationship teases are seemingly at an end, but could it be that a different Judgment Day member has been pulling the strings all along? In a backstage rendezvous, it was made clear that Dominik had not arranged the meetup, and it was actually Finn Balor who told Dom where to go. It was Finn who had Dominik go with him seemingly to find Jey Uso, but this week's Raw may be the latest sign that the Irishman and Liv are closer than it seems. Some time ago, Balor and Liv were seen exiting the same car, but this tease was seemingly forgotten about in the wake of the wave of actions between Morgan and Mysterio. It was last month that Morgan left her hotel room keycard, seemingly for Dominik to pick up, but it was instead Balor who pocketed the card in question. Could it be that Finn and Liv have been in cahoots all along and that it'll be Balor who turns on the Judgment Day while the attention is all on Mysterio instead? What are your thoughts on Dominik Mysterio berating Liv Morgan to prove his allegiance to Rhea Ripley on Raw? Sound off in the comments. Of course, the Ripley-Dominik relationship is just for TV, as Mommy recently married AEW's Buddy Matthews, who reacted to this week's segment with a GIF. On Twitter, Matthews shared a GIF of Disney's Stitch hungrily licking the glass enclosure he's in, as Matthews is keeping a close eye on his wife's work on Monday Night Raw. The rivalry of Drew McIntyre and CM Punk continued on Raw, as the Scottish Warriors seemed on the cusp of being granted a match at SummerSlam during last week's show. That was until McIntyre's ego got the better of him, and he refused to apologize to the referees he attacked at Money in the Bank, resulting in Adam Pearce extending his suspension. On this week's Raw, CM Punk made his first appearance since costing Drew the World Heavyweight title at Money in the Bank, and revealed that he is medically cleared. Punk got the blockbuster news from his surgeon last Saturday, and on Raw, wasted no time in calling out McIntyre for a fight. The Scottish Warrior stormed down in anger but declined Punk's offer, and, undeterred, Punk charged towards him, only to be stopped by WWE officials. Adding fuel to the fire, McIntyre mocked Punk by flaunting a bracelet he had taken weeks before, which bears the names of Punk's wife AJ and their dog Larry, who now has his own WWE merch. This led to GM Adam Pearce coming out and making the match between the two heated rivals official for SummerSlam, and the Raw GM had another blockbuster announcement to make. Pearce revealed Seth freaking Rollins as the guest's referee for their bout, and Rollins came out, leaving both McIntyre and Punk stunned. Rollins mocked both Punk and McIntyre, both men he's had issues with, and confirmed Pearce's decision, and the segment ended with Seth celebrating as Punk and Drew had an intense face-off. What are your thoughts on Seth Rollins being revealed as the special guest referee for the CM Punk vs. Drew McIntyre match at WWE SummerSlam? Sound off in the comments. Raw kicked off with the King of the Ring, Gunther, who said he'd reflected on some of the comments he'd made about Damian Priest last week. In case you forgot, last week's promo saw Gunther speak about his privilege and mock Priest's hard times pre-WWE, inserting a class war element many feel wasn't needed. After calling Priest trash last week, Gunther took back his apology as the Green Bay crowd wasn't interested in hearing it, and called Priest a bum that drew a ton of boos. Gunther said that everyone knows that Damian Priest doesn't live up to being WWE World Heavyweight Champion, leaning into the critique many have had of his title reign. The King added that Priest's cute little sob story about coming from the streets doesn't change the fact that he's a pretender and a wannabe, and called the entire Judgment Day street trash. Like last week, Gunther insisted that it'd be easier on everyone for Priest to just hand him the title, saying Damian should get it over with and then can go back to the trailer park. This latest insult brought Damian Priest to the ring, and the two had an exceptional brawl, which saw officials swarm the ring to separate the champion and his challenger. This was a chaotic scene and excellent high energy to start the show, which escalated the issues between the World Heavyweight Champion and the Ring General. The dislike was real, and unlike last week's promo, which felt forced, this highlighted the intensity of the issues between two of WWE's top superstars. The brawl was helped by Michael Cole and Pat McAfee, who added another layer of excitement, and the fight continued up the aisle and all the way up to the entrance ramp. This was the first time in his title reign in which Priest looked like a babyface world champion, as opposed to a heel finding himself in the face role, and the Green Bay crowd ate it up. The brawl continued, and it got out of hand backstage, and officials had to finally separate them after the commercial break, showing just how long the two were throwing hands. We'll have to see how SummerSlam turns out, because the biggest party of the summer is certainly heating up when it comes to the World Heavyweight Championship bout. Damian Priest is also turned babyface during this feud, as Gunther is obviously getting the heel reaction with his street trash remarks. Considering that options against Gunther have included Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre, Priest was hardly the fans' first pick, but his work in this angle has made their match must-see. In recent days, it was reported that Bobby Lashley and MVP had been pulled from WWE's internal roster, signifying that WWE has no intention of using them on screen. While there's been a lot of speculation about the two potentially leaving WWE, a new update has revealed the current status of the Almighty and his former manager. Per Mike Johnson of PW Insider, MVP's WWE contract is set to expire in mid-August, and it was noted that there haven't been any major discussions about a new deal. According to the report, there had been some talk about WWE potentially using MVP as a producer or announcer, which hasn't happened yet. However, there were reportedly tryouts for these roles. Fans may recall that when MVP returned to WWE in January 2020, he appeared in the Men's Royal Rumble match, but this was supposed to be a one-off, and he was slated to be a producer. When the COVID-19 pandemic happened though, WWE didn't need as many producers due to live events being cancelled, and MVP instead became solely an on-screen talent. The report added that WWE has made an offer to Bobby Lashley, but it's not one that'd make him jump to sign, according to a source close to the situation. That source adds that Lashley has strongly considered seeing what he'd be worth outside WWE, and this comes over 2 months after his last match at a May 5th live event. For Lashley's most recent TV match, that came back on the April 12th edition of Smackdown, where he faced Santos Escobar and LA Knight, as WWE has been in no rush to use him. Fightful Select noted that Lashley plans to continue wrestling even in the event that he leaves the company at the end of his deal, which is said to be expiring relatively soon. Dave Meltzer adds that Lashley and MVP are reportedly aiming to revamp the Hurt business in AEW once their current deals with WWE expire. In the past, MVP has attempted to register the name, but a trip to the US Patent and Trademark Office website shows that the Hurt business is still a term owned by WWE. While they may not have the name, it's easy to imagine that Lashley and MVP could have a legally distinct name in AEW, and the pair are reportedly hoping to bring Shelton Benjamin in. The gold standard was released from WWE in September of last year, and it's unclear who would replace Cedric Alexander, who at this time is still with WWE. If Lashley leaves the WWE, there's no telling what's next for Angelo Dawkins, Montez Ford, and B-Fab, as the other members of the Pride have been without their leader for months now. Fans have been clamoring for a singles push for Ford for some time, but WWE appears to have no interest in it, despite the talent and charisma that Mr. Bianca Belair has displayed. There's still plenty of speculation as to what the future holds for MVP and Lashley, but on Twitter, Big E said that Lashley was a monster, a specimen, a professional, and a gentleman. It was Lashley who Big E dethroned to win the WWE Championship in 2021, and we'll continue to provide updates on Lashley and MVP as they become available. Karrion Kross and the Authors of Pain continued the Final Testament's tormenting of Xavier Woods as the heels defeated the former King of the Ring, Otis, and Akira Tozawa. Even though he lost, it was hard to ignore just how popular Otis is, and he might be the most organically over babyface on any WWE roster right now. That's saying something when you consider how many incarnations he's been through and how loyal the crowd has remained to the former Mr. Money in the Bank. Fans will have also noticed that Otis performed the Caterpillar, a move Chad Gable had been vehemently opposed to, signifying his complete split from his former coach. Crowd support or not, Otis and his team came up short, and it was a much welcomed change of pace to see Karrion Kross get the win, something it feels happens once in a blue moon. Despite his past accolades, the former NXT champion seems to lose more than he wins, and this has stunted his growth on the main roster, and by proxy, the Final Testament. Speaking of the faction, WWE has still yet to give an explanation as to what the group is and why these wrestlers have come together for an unsaid common goal. Even a 10-second video would do wonders to get fans to actually care about the faction, but until that day comes, expect lukewarm reactions to Karrion Kross and his allies. On last week's Raw, Chad Gable shared that Bo Dallas is the man under the Uncle Howdy mask, hardly a shocking revelation, but Gable still called him out. During this week's show, this story continued as Gable made his way to the ring with the Creed brothers after the Final Testament's victory over Otis, Tozawa, and Woods. Gable chastised and mocked Otis for leading the Alpha Academy into a loss as he garnered heat from the crowd, and then put over the Creed brothers for being freak athletes. Chad even offered an Alpha Academy reunion as part of his new team, but Otis, Akira Tozawa, and Maxine Dupree turned their former mentor down. The Creed brothers jumped Otis, and although he did mount a comeback, he was eventually overwhelmed and beat down, and this attack would also see the use of steel chairs. As this beatdown continued, the lights went out and the Wyatt 6 music started, with the Green Bay crowd chanting "You fucked up" in the direction of the Creeds and Gable. The Creed brothers stood ready to face the faction though, but Uncle Howdy appeared behind Gable and hit him with his sister Abigail to a huge pop from the crowd. This was the first Sister Abigail on WWE television since Bray Wyatt's passing, and they delivered it in dramatic fashion, with the crowd giving a perfect response. This ovation from the fans was heartwarming and proved, if more proof was even needed, that Bray Wyatt will live forever in the hearts of wrestling fans. We'll have to see what happens with Uncle Howdy's stable after this, as something is cooking, and it could come at SummerSlam, which is just a few weeks away. But what's your take on the Wyatt 6? Do you think they're heading in the right direction, or would you book them differently? Let us know what you think in the comments section. Almost every week since they've arrived on Raw, Nikki Cross has hand-delivered a VHS tape to the commentators, and thus far we've heard from Bo Dallas and Eric Rowan. Both men have spoke about how the death of Bray Wyatt affected them and the reasons for joining the Wyatt 6, but this week it was Cross's time in the hot seat. The video opened with the Pluto symbol we've seen plenty of with the Wyatts before showing footage of a woman in a white dress. The video then cut to Cross wearing a different white dress with Uncle Howdy saying, "Look at yourself," and Cross responds with a smile. "They lied, they ignored you, watched you suffer in solitude. I've been the answer all along." Howdy adds as scenes quickly jump back and forth showing different clips. One is a clip of Cross and Howdy dancing together as we hear a slowed down version of "Look at yourself," and Cross screams into the camera before a jump scare ends the video. In earlier iterations of her character, Cross rarely, if ever, spoke, which suggests this could be as close as we'll get to hearing specifics of her decision to join the group. Cross's WWE past does include examples of broken friendships, such as the one with Alexa Bliss, that could in theory be explored down the line. With that said, WWE could perhaps be saving any future exploration of Cross for when Bliss is back on TV, as many still expect her to join the Wyatt 6, given her history with Bray. Now part of the faction, Nikki is filling the role of Abby the Witch, and her video this week only continues to give the Wyatt 6 the attention of the WWE Universe. Before a scheduled match between Pete Dunne and Bronson Reed could get underway, Sheamus rocked the Bruiserweight and unloaded on the massive Australian. Hell-bent on proving he's not some doormat for others to walk over, Sheamus cleared the ring of both men as Michael Cole excitedly claimed that Sheamus is coming for Dunne. What did you make of the booking of Sheamus, and where do you think it'll go from here? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. In a backstage segment, Rhea Ripley criticized the Judgment Day for a backstage attack on Jey Uso, but Finn Balor made clear he's tired of the team being disrespected. The attack came about during a backstage interview with Sami Zayn, and it was the Intercontinental Champ who made the save for Jey when he was ambushed by JD McDonough and Carlito. Balor revealed that he's gotten Adam Pearce's permission for a tag match pitting the Judgment Day against Uso and Sami Zayn, who'd made the save during the attack. Not only that, but Balor will represent the faction next week when he faces Gunther in what'll be, no doubt, a banger of a match between two immensely talented European stars. With SummerSlam less than 2 weeks away, Sami Zayn has been in need of an opponent for the show, and on this week's Raw, the Intercontinental Champion got exactly that. In a number 1 contenders match, Ilya Dragunov made his way to the ring, as did Braun Breaker, and the second-generation star debuted a new theme song for the match. Breaker and Dragunov were prepared to tear each other apart for the opportunity to go to SummerSlam in a war between the two former NXT champions. Just before a commercial break, Breaker executed a move on the apron so brutal that Michael Cole called him a sicko, as the veteran announcer was on fire all night long. Coming back from the break, the two were still locked up and fighting for control of the match, and they traded several near falls, with fans in the arena excited to see who'd emerge on top. The Green Bay audience were split in deciding who to root for, and eventually settled on a correct "This is awesome" chant, but the finish of the match was not one fans saw coming. Dragunov took a hit to his head after a spear on the apron that was so severe he couldn't continue, and the ref called for the bell and declared Breaker the winner. This was a fantastic match, hampered by the finish, though it protected Dragunov and spared him from another unnecessary defeat though, so it was probably the best possible outcome. Zayn has carried the Intercontinental title since WrestleMania 40, where he defeated Gunther, and now he has another war with Braun Breaker lined up, this time at the biggest party of the summer. Sami may have won at Money in the Bank, but that has just seemed to fuel a new level of viciousness from Braun, who is hungry to win the Intercontinental Gold in Cleveland. Do you think Sami will find a way to retain next weekend, or is the Intercontinental title destined to be held by Braun Breaker? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Sonya Deville continued to lead by example on Raw by picking up another big win, this time over Queen of the Ring runner-up and former NXT Women's Champion, Lyra Valkyria. This match saw Deville control throughout a commercial break, only for the resilient Valkyrie to fight her way back and seize control later on. But Zoe Stark would then interfere. This triggered a brawl, pitting herself and Shayna Baszler against Katana Chance and Kaden Carter, and Deville capitalized by hitting the Deville's Advocate on Lyra to score the win. While it was important for Deville to go over, beating Valkyria threatens to damage whatever momentum she has left after a red-hot start to her main roster career. The former NXT Women's Champion feels like she's cooled off significantly over the last month as attention has shifted to other women, and this did not help matters. What do you make of WWE's direction, or lack thereof, of Lyra Valkyria right now? How would you be booking the Valkyrie? Sound off down below. In the tag team main event, Jey Uso gained a measure of revenge for the beating he took earlier in the night, as he and Sami defeated Balor and McDonough in non-title action. Though the World Tag Team titles weren't on the line, that didn't stop the action from being stellar, as all four men had great chemistry and shared the ring like veterans. Balor and McDonough are as a tandem based on their recent work together, while Uso and Zayn have history from their days in the Bloodline, but have also had separate tag title reigns. The finish was great too, with Zayn depositing Balor to the floor and then rocking McDonough with the haluva kick before Uso hit the top rope splash to score the win. As the show went off the air though, Braun Breaker attacked Zayn from out of nowhere with a spear, delivering another message ahead of their rematch at SummerSlam. Breaker standing tall is an effective final play for Raw, as it heightens the profile of the Intercontinental title as a championship worthy of being in the main event spot. More so, it positions Breaker as the last superstar fans saw as the show faded to black, another sign that this man is being groomed to be a future face of the company. For Breaker, his journey to the top will see him travel to Cleveland for a shot at the Intercontinental title, and what did you think of the main event and what came after the match? In singles action, Zelina Vega took on Zoe Stark despite having her arm in a brace after being attacked by Stark, Sonya Deville, and Shayna Baszler the previous week. Stark had DeVille and Baszler in her corner, and they interfered in the match, but the arrival of Lyra Valkyria, Katana Chance, and Kaden Carter changed the complexion of the match. Amid the ringside brawl, Vega capitalized and hit Stark with her arm brace for the win, giving the LWO member a much-needed win after a series of setbacks. And we're ending with Ricky Starks, who has been noticeably absent from AEW programming as of late, a change that has baffled fans considering how prominently he had been featured. His most recent appearance was on the March 30th Collision, where he and Big Bill faced Top Flight, but we may now know why the 2023 Owen Hart Cup winner has vanished from TV. On Fightful Select's Backstage Report podcast, Sean Ross Sapp was asked if Ricky Starks has backstage heat, and said Starks has some heat. It wasn't stated what has drawn this heat in Starks' direction, but these backstage issues do come at an interesting time in his career. It was only recently that Booker T called Starks a perfect fit for WWE, and given the success of NXT champ Ethan Page, there may be some AEW talent considering jumping to the gold brand. For what it's worth, Tony Khan recently told Shaq Wrestling that he likes Starks and thinks he's tremendous, and that he'd love to get him back on AEW TV anytime. Khan may want Starks back on TV, but he's still not booking him, and time will tell what the future holds for the young wrestler and his backstage heat.